Welcome to the Wire Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things sports. I'm Ryan McCrary, and on today's episode, we are going to be recapping the 2026 NFL Combine. The NFL Combine was this past weekend. I'm going to talk about 10 guys that I thought had really nice performances and helped out their draft stock. We're going to talk about some of the biggest names in the draft, as well as some underrated guys, and even some guys from smaller schools. That's what we have on tap for today's episode. I hope you're excited. I know I am. And let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, let's go ahead and kick off today's episode by talking about the guy who was probably the most popular name at this year's Combine, especially on the first day. And that is linebacker Sonny Styles from Ohio State. Sonny Styles had a ridiculous combine. His numbers across the board were really good. He had mind-blowing explosion scores. His vertical was insane, had the best vertical of all time for a linebacker. His broad jump was great as well. And then his speed scores were amazing. He had a 4.46 40-yard dash, which is insane. His 10-yard split was really good as well. Then he ran the shuttle and the three-cone, which is great to see. You don't see a lot of top prospects do that. His shuttle was good. His three-cone was okay. But man, what a very impressive combine for him. The size, the explosion, the speed combo. It was insane. All very impressive. And I think this was very important for Sonny Styles to have a great combine, because now that he had a strong combine, he is probably a guarantee to go top 10. I'm not saying that he's going to be a lock. I'm not going to personally guarantee that he would go inside the top 10. But it feels like his chances of going in the top 10 increased a lot at the Combine. He may have gone top 10 already, now that his athletic testing measurements have come in at, some of the best we've ever seen from a linebacker. I think his chances are pretty good of being selected very early. And he's a very interesting prospect. He's a solid pass rusher and coverage linebacker based on his career production in college. But his final season at Ohio State was insane. He had an 80-plus PFF grade as a run defender, a pass rusher, and in coverage. And that's very impressive. The versatility he displayed during his last season at Ohio State was incredible. He's the 12th ranked player on the consensus big board, and my analytical NFL draft prospect model has him ranked 21st. So it'll be really interesting to see where Sonny Styles ends up going on draft night. The next player I wanted to talk about is another top-tier defender in this year's draft. That is Texas Tech defensive end David Bailey, one of my favorite players in this year's draft. He's one of the best edge rushers in the class, and he put up an edge one type combine performance. He did measure a little bit small, especially in terms of his weight. He measured in at like 251 pounds, which is a little bit light for an edge rusher, but everything else was elite. He had a hyper elite broad jump, and his 40-yard dash was absolutely amazing. His broad jump was 35 inches. His broad jump was 10 feet 9 inches. His vertical was 35 inches. Then he had a 4.5 40-yard dash. A 4.5 40-yard dash at 251 pounds is nuts. And that's ridiculous. That should not be possible. And then he had a 1.62 10-yard split, which is a phenomenal mark for a guy this size. The explosion and the speed for someone this big is really impressive. He also measured in with really big hands, 10 inches or 10 and a quarter inch hands. That's really impressive. And he measured in with arms that are, his arm length was 33 inches or 33 and like 3/4 of an inch. That's really impressive. So he's got big hands, long arms. He's fast. He's explosive. Not the biggest edge rusher, but the length, the speed, the explosion. It's all top tier. And it makes sense why he is ranked as one of the top edge rushers in this year's class. He isn't the greatest run defender in terms of his numbers, but his career stop rate and his missed tackle rate are really, really good. He's also one of the most productive pass rushers we've seen from the edge position in quite some time. He is just a very good pass rusher across the board. That's why he is 4th on the consensus big board and 6th in my model's rankings. And it seems very likely that now David Bailey is going to be a top 5 pick based on his combine performance. It was just that good. So I'm expecting him to be a top 5 pick on draft night. Next up, I want to talk about an offensive player. That is Spencer Fano, tackle from Utah. He measured in with solid size for a tackle, 6'5", 311 pounds. Not great marks, but not awful either. His explosion scores were really good. A 32-inch vertical and a 9-foot 3-inch broad jump. Both marks are elite. And then he was really fast. His 40-yard dash was amazing for his size, 4.9 140. And then his 1.72 10-yard split was excellent as well. And then one of the most important combine drills for a tackle is the 3-cone, and Fano did excellent in that drill with a 7.34 3-cone, which ranks in the 96th percentile. That is absolutely incredible. Very good numbers across the board for Fano. For him, I think you have to be very, very satisfied with your performance here at the combine. His numbers across the board were just excellent. And I didn't talk about his arm length, but he did measure in with 32-inch arms. Not long, not great length there, but not bad either. It wasn't like his arms were short to the point where you're really questioning how he'll project to the NFL. You can't say the same for Ruben Bain. I'm not going to talk about Ruben Bain in this episode, but he's a guy with notably short arms, and his arms were really short at the combine. I think Fano's really good. Excellent run blocker. His run blocking ability is really incredible. His pass blocking production in college wasn't that good, though. But run blocking, historically, has been more important for tackles than I think a lot of people realize. And so that, combined with Fano's athleticism, makes him a really interesting tackle prospect. He is 6th on the consensus big board, 8th in my model's rankings. And in my opinion, he should probably be the consensus tackle 1, but I know not everyone would agree with that. But I think he is just that good. All right, next up, let's move down and talk about one of the top players in the class, running back from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love. I am a huge fan of Jeremiah Love. I know a lot of people are as well. There are a good amount of people that think that Love has a case to be the best prospect in the draft. And at the combine, he didn't do all of the drills, but he did weigh in, he did do his measurements, and he ran the 40-yard dash, which is what I'm going to primarily be talking about with him. He measured in at 6 feet, 212 pounds, which is solid size for a running back. But what I was really impressed by was his 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.36 40, which is in the 99th percentile. That's incredible. And he had a 1.55 10-yard split, which is not quite elite, but very, very good. I think Jeremiah Love is a special prospect. And the fact that he measured in at 212 pounds and had this good of a 40-yard dash, that is just icing on the cake for him. In my opinion, he's one of the better running back prospects we've seen in recent memory. He's an explosive runner who creates yards at a very high level. He's also incredibly efficient as a pass catcher. His pass blocking numbers in college weren't that great, but the rushing ability, the pass catching ability, is top notch. And it's why he is a top 10 player on the consensus big board, coming in at number 9. My model is much, much higher on him than the consensus, ranking him as the number one player in the class right now. And we'll see if that changes as the process goes along, as players get more athletic testing data, as we see players do their pro days, and then the consensus big board changes. But right now, he is my model's number one player, and I think this combine performance helped him out a little bit. The speed is just insane. You don't really see a lot of running backs with this combination of, tackle breaking ability, pass catching ability, and speed. It's insane. The fact that he didn't measure in at 215 pounds or heavier does stink a little bit, but if he did that, we'd be talking about, arguably the best running back prospect over the last couple of years. I do think he is in that conversation. He's that good. All right, let's go back and talk about a few tight ends. There were some tight ends with really good combine performances at the combine. First off, I got to talk about Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon, who balled out at the combine. He came in with really poor size, measured in at 6'3", 241 pounds. He's pretty short for a tight end, also very light. He's kind of a tweener between being like a receiver and a tight end, and that's becoming more common recently. So I don't think that's a death sentence for him by any means. And his athletic testing numbers were off the charts good. His vertical was insane at 43.5 inches. That was the best of all time when he did his vertical. But then, some other guy did the vertical and broke his record right after him. We're going to talk about that guy later on. He also had one of the best broad jumps we've ever seen from a tight end at 11 feet and 2 inches. And his 40-yard dash, the best we've ever seen from a tight end, 4.39. Absolutely ridiculous for a guy, 241 pounds, to run this fast. It's insane. And his 10-yard split was 1.54, one of the best we've ever seen for a tight end. This was a historic athletic performance from Sadiq Bey. Oh my gosh. It's so embarrassing. Sadiq Bey is a basketball player, for anyone who doesn't know. Kenyon Sadiq, I meant to say. Very impressive athletic performance from Sadiq here. He also, I almost overlooked this, had a very good bench press. Had 26 reps on the bench, so he's very strong. Man, what a very impressive combine for Sadiq. And he's a very good tight end prospect. I'm a big fan of his. He's a very good blocker for a tight end. And he was a very, explosive receiver in college, a great deep threat, whose efficiency and tackle breaking, plus his ability to get open and haul in 50-50 balls, make him a really intriguing prospect. The consensus big board has him at number 19 in the rankings. My model likes him a little bit more, having him ranked 13th. He's tight end 1, and I think he has a chance to go pretty high in the draft. I think top 15 as a ceiling. It seems likely that he's going to be a top 20 pick. He's definitely going to be a first-round pick, it seems, but I think he has a chance to be picked in the top half of the first round. All right, next we're going to talk about the tight end that competed with Sadiq at the combine, putting up historic marks across the board. I mentioned that Sadiq had the greatest vertical jump of all time for a tight end before someone broke it, or maybe that was the broad jump. I think it was the broad jump before someone broke it. Actually, no, I'm looking. It was the vertical. Sorry, I'm looking at a lot of numbers here, and some of them were a bit confusing. So Sadiq did have the greatest vertical we've ever seen from a tight end. And then Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt, tight end, broke it. Stowers had an insane combine, just like Sadiq. And like Sadiq, he measured in really short and light. He's 6'3", 239 pounds. Both marks very, very poor for a tight end. And so he, kind of like Sadiq, is a bit of a receiver tight end tweener. But he's very athletic. He had a 45.5-inch vertical, which is Absolutely insane. I mean, what in the world? A 45.5-inch vertical at 239 pounds should not be possible. That is just absolutely insane. He also had the best broad jump we've ever seen from a tight end at 11 feet and 3 inches. And then his speed numbers were great. A 4.5 140 is amazing. Nowhere near as good as Sadiq's, but that's still a great mark for a tight end. And he had a 1.59 10-yard split. The numbers were across the board for Stowers and Sadiq. They were going bar for bar, breaking records at the combine. It was a sight to behold. I really like Stowers as a tight end prospect. He's a high usage receiver who excels at getting open and earning targets, and he's an absolute demon on short routes. I'm a little bit worried about how he'll perform on deeper routes, but what he does as a target earner on short routes and his ability to get open is really impressive. I do wonder if he's a good run blocker. Like, what is he going to provide in the blocking game? Sadiq was a much better blocker in college, but Stowers, very athletic prospect, who was really, really productive at Vanderbilt. The consensus has him ranked 58th. My model has him ranked 35th. Not the perfect prospect. And I think his receiving game is really not ideal for what makes tight end prospects great tight ends in the NFL. Usually you want to see your tight end be really effective as a deep threat. You want to see him be really explosive, whether it be, as a vertical passing threat or vertical, pass catching threat or breaking tackles. You don't really see that with Stowers, but he was very productive in his own way in college, and he's a great athlete, which you like to see. So we'll see how high he goes in the draft. I think he is probably going to be a top 50 pick after that combine. We'll see. I know he's outside the top 50 on the consensus big board, but I can see him being picked in the top 50. And if he does, I think his combine performance is going to be a big reason why that happened. Let's move on. Talk about another offensive prospect. That is tackle from Georgia, Monroe Freeling, who absolutely crushed it at the combine, had one of the best combine performances we've ever seen from a tackle. He's huge, 6'7", 315 pounds, a little bit light, but he is absolutely ginormous in terms of his height. And then he had a great explosion scores, a 33.5-inch vertical, and a 9-foot, 7-inch broad jump are amazing. He also had a 4.93 40-yard dash, which is phenomenal, and a 1.71 10-yard split. He also had a 34 and 3/4 arm length, which is ridiculous. The dude's massive. He's fast. He's explosive. We are clearly looking at a physical specimen here. He also had 10-inch and 3/4 hands, which is ridiculous. He's got freaking huge oven mitts as hands. So, like I said, clearly we're looking at a physical specimen with Freeling. Now, I don't love his profile as a prospect. His analytical profile is just really, honestly, mediocre. I have these pass blocking scores, these pass blocking and run blocking scores that measure how good offensive tackle prospects are at, pass blocking and run blocking based on their career production. And Freeling's pass blocking and run blocking scores were below average, which you hate to see, but the athleticism is legit. He's 25th on the consensus big board, 71st in my model's ranking. So the consensus and my model, they're clashing here. But man, the athleticism Freeling has is very impressive, and you love to see tackle prospects have good size and good athleticism. Freeling does that, so we'll see where he goes on draft day. I think his big combine may cement his position as a first-round pick, which you'll love to see for him. Next up, I am going to talk about one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. That is Florida center Jake Slaughter, a guy I believe is being very underrated. He had a very good combine performance. Starting off with the size, he's 6'5", 303 pounds, a little bit light, but very tall for a center. And he's super explosive with a 32.5-inch vertical and a 9-foot 2-inch broad jump. He was very fast, had a 5'10", 40-yard dash, which is very good, but he had an elite 10-yard split at 174, which is very good. He's got pretty solid length, I'd say, for a center, with 32-inch arms and 10-inch hands. This is a guy with a very good all-around athletic profile. One of the better athletic profiles we've ever seen from a center. And he's just a very good center prospect. He's a very good pass blocker and run blocker. He really shines as a run blocker on zone runs. I think the consensus is behind on him. He's ranked 75th on the consensus big board, but my model loves him, has him ranked 26th overall. I wonder how high he'll be taken on during the draft. I think he has a chance to be picked in the second round, but we'll see. My model loves him and views him as a guy who can be picked, in the back half of the first round or early on in the second round. He really is just a phenomenal center prospect, and I think whoever drafts him is getting a very good prospect. All right, now I want to talk about a few underrated receiver prospects. Some guys from smaller schools who, one of these guys has actually gotten a lot of hype from the NFL draft community, and that is actually the first guy I want to talk about here, receiver from Georgia State, Ted Hurst. If you're a draft junkie like me, you have probably heard of this guy. He had a very good combine. He's tall, measuring in at 6'4", 206 pounds, has great size for a receiver, and he was pretty explosive. His vertical was actually not amazing at 36.5 inches, but his 11-foot 3-inch broad jump was insane. That is absolutely elite. He also was very fast, had a 4.42 40 and a 1.55 10-yard split. That 40 and that broad jump for that size is really impressive. We're looking at a tall and explosive wide receiver prospect. And he was very productive in college in terms of volume, which honestly is what you expect from a guy at Georgia State. But he wasn't just a volume merchant. He was actually pretty good at creating uncontested targets in college, and he was elite at catching 50-50 balls, which you love to see from a guy this size. I will say his efficiency does not match the volume. He was elite in terms of volume, but not elite in terms of efficiency, which is disappointing. Also, his production on different route depths, like his short routes, intermediate routes, deep routes, that kind of production was mediocre. So I'm not the biggest fan of Hurst as a prospect, but he does do a few things really well, and so I do think there is a specific role for him at the NFL level. I just don't think he is a great all-around receiver prospect, and so I'm not that big of a fan of his, but the athleticism, the size, his ability to haul in 50-50 balls is really impressive. On the consensus big board, he is ranked 89th. In my model, he's ranked 120th. I am very interested to see where he goes on draft night. If a team who knows what they're doing with him and has a very clear role for him drafts him, I think he has a chance to do some solid things in the NFL. I just wouldn't expect him to be very productive because I don't think he does enough at a high level. And then the last player I want to talk about during this episode is a guy I think is really intriguing as a small school wide receiver prospect. That is North Dakota receiver Bryce Lance. He's very tall, measured in at 6'3", 204 pounds, has good size for a receiver. And he was super explosive at the combine, had a 41.5-inch vert, which is insane. His broad jump was also insane at 11 feet, 1 inches. Those are excellent marks. And he ran a 4.34 40-yard dash, one of the fastest 40-yard dashes of any receiver at the combine this year. and he had a 1.49 10-yard split. I wish his 3-cone was a little bit better. He had a 7-second 3-cone, which is okay. This is about average. His shuttle was really good, though, at 4.15. Love to see it. This was a very impressive combine performance all around from Bryce Lance. He was tall, very big, super explosive, and fast. That's a really nice athletic profile. I know athleticism isn't that important for receiver prospects, but when a guy is super athletic at this position, you like to see it. It's fun to see. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Ted Hurst, but I actually do kind of like Bryce Lance as a prospect. He was super efficient as a receiver in college. He has amazing hands, catches everything. He's very explosive as a receiver who shines on deep routes, and that kind of profile, along with his athleticism, is a great match. I think he can be a really good deep threat in the NFL. I think he may end up being specialized as a deep threat at the next level, because I think he does have some yak and separation concerns. But when you can get a receiver this tall, this fast, this explosive, who's really good as a deep threat and catches everything, that's a really nice profile. Now, Bryce Lance is coming from the FCS level, so you do have to take that into consideration. But this is kind of an intriguing profile that he has put together. I wonder if he's going to be the first FCS player off the board. I don't think he will, but I think he will be in consideration there, and is one of the more likely candidates to be the first FCS player off the board. He'll be competing with Caleb Proctor and Cole Payton for those honors. On the consensus big board, he is 146th. My model is way higher, having him ranked 83rd. My model thinks he is one of the 100 best prospects in this year's draft. So shout out to Bryce Lance. I'm really interested to see how he, develops in the NFL. Well, those are my thoughts on the NFL Combine. I wanted to talk about 10 players I thought really shined this past weekend. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I didn't really get to watch too much of the Combine this year. I wasn't locked in like I usually am. I did get to see, some of the 40s, but wasn't, as in tune as I like to be, but still was able to do a lot of research for this podcast. And these were 10 guys that I thought really shined. And so shout out to all these guys. They, did a great job at the Combine this year. This is it for today's episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That would help me out a lot. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please leave a review. That would help me out as well. I'm excited for the NFL Draft. I hope you are as well, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I will see y'all next time. God bless.